So it was about 7 years after we first got married. Tania was 4 months pregnant. You know, we'd ask each other if it was like too good to be true. And then around the time that COVID hit, I started noticing that I was kind of off balance and no one knew what it was.
And everything seemed fine until one said, you should go to a movement disorder specialist. And that is when he came home with the diagnosis. And I remember the moment so vividly. I was rushing out to pick up our children. I was 4 months pregnant with our fourth child. We have 4 girls in Anara. And he came in and he just told me what his doctor said, and we just hugged and it was a very, very, very special moment, and I didn't really know what it meant.
Welcome back to another special episode of Stories of Hope, introducing Tania and Amit, a couple that reflects resiliency in the face of illness and personal odysseys that will blow your mind. I've never met a couple like Tania and Amit, and they really open your eyes into seeing a new approach on how to deal with a challenge that you thought you'd never be able to learn how to live with. And yet together they thrive. Now, before we jump into the episode, I know if you're anything like me and you love summer, then what makes summer perfect? A hammock, a slushy machine. But yet you might think, it's out of my budget. It's an extra. It's not something I need. But with PZ Deals, you can find those items that are budget friendly. I just checked and I saw that their slushy machine went from $380 to $189. That's a pretty good deal. That could easily be dinner. But you have a slushy machine, as well as their hammock. It was on sale for 50% off. A box of Italian ices. And then they also have loafers and watches and t-shirts and kitchenware. Again, all at the tips of your fingers for the prices that you want. So go to pcdeals.com or download the app today so that it personalizes the things that you want, because with PZ Deals, you'll never pay full price again. Hi, I'm Tzipora Grodko, and this is the Stories of Hope podcast. So exciting. I've never had anyone from Vienna, Austria on our podcast, let alone anyone that has the beautiful story that the two of you share. So
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in. And let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about who you are and where you come from.
Yeah, so I was born in Israel. I grew up in Austria. I lived in England for 12 years. And for the past 11 years now in America. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So please paint us a picture of what life was like growing up in Austria.
Absolutely. So I was born in Israel. My father is actually escaped the Holocaust. He's much older. I grew up. My father was 62 when he had me, and after the war, we ended up in Austria. I was only a baby when we moved to Austria, but my parents met in Eretz Israel, and that's when we moved. And his story is absolutely fascinating. He escaped the Holocaust right before it started. At the age of 16, he took the last train out, and he warned everybody around him that the Nazis are coming. And then he took the last train, and nobody believed him. And he took the train from Lviv. The next train was going to Odessa. And then he went there, and then to Georgia, to many different places. And many years later, when he returned, all the people that he had warned perished.
How did he know the Nazis were coming?
He overheard officers talking about it. And he was only 16 years old, but he picked up on something. He said something bad is going to happen and we have to go. And he couldn't find his father. And he took his mother and his brother and he said, let's run. And they took the last train out. That was when he was 16. So after many years, he returned and he went to medical school in Lviv, in his hometown. And then later on, when Eretz Israel was established, that's when he went and he met my mother, who is 21 years younger than him.
Oh,
Yeah.
How did they meet?
So my mom was an opera singer, and she performed at the National Opera of Tel Aviv. And he was a big fan of opera. He loved the opera and he saw her. And he was like, I need to meet this woman. And he knew that my grandmother was, he researched my mother, and there was a bakery in Tel Aviv that my grandma was running. And my mom always, she helped out. And he went to the bakery, introduced himself, asked her out, and the rest is history.
Like a real gentleman. Yes. I mean, he stalked her first,
exactly.
as he had to. That's so romantic and sweet.
Yeah.
Are your parents still alive?
Yes. Not my father, my mother. Yeah, she's in Austria.
Wow.
And actually, this is how we ended up in Vienna. Vienna is the city of classical music. So her dream was to perform in Vienna. And so when we moved, because a lot of times people ask, what made you go from Israel back to Austria after everything your father has been through, right? To end up in a place that is anti-Semitic. But it was it's a beautiful place. And I have a lot of great memories and not so great memories there. But that is how we ended up back in Vienna, because my mom had a dream that's where she wanted to be. It's everything in Vienna is about classical music. So it's a magnificent place to grow up in. A lot of culture, a lot of music, art, opera. This is what people love about it. So that is how we ended up there. And my father he was an OBG, and his mission in life was to bring children into the world after, so many people died. That became his mission, and he lived for it. He actually delivered me.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
And that is very precious for me.
Wow. Your father sounds like he was an extremely resilient fighter.
Yes.
How old were you when he passed away?
He was 91.
Wow.
Yeah. He passed away right after he got to meet Amit, and we were engaged, and that is right before our wedding. Yeah,
that's really special.
Yeah,
but what's his full Hebrew name?
Alexander Ben Eliyahu.
Well, this episode should be in the merit of his neshama.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you for introducing us to him. It's no surprise that your story precedes his. There's clearly genetic greatness in you. And I always appreciate being able to see where someone comes from. And I'm imagining, 16-year-olds today, what they're busy with, their frustrations of insecurity, Instagram, social pressures, and having this 16-year-old tell everyone that he believes the Nazis are coming to kill them, and then ultimately transforming his life into being someone that brings life to justify those that took life.
Yes. Yes.
And then, just casual, he married the opera singer that caught his eye.
Yeah. But I grew up with this, knowing what it's like to live for a mission, for a vision, to see how you can actually transform your life, taking something, and really building something from the ground up. Because he really had to start all over again. And after everything he's been through, after all the atrocities, and his whole family perished. So it's really remarkable. And I always say I grew up very fast. I matured very quickly because I heard stories that nobody at my age was hearing. At the age of 7, he told me stories of what had happened. So,
is there one particular story that you'd like to share with us?
So one story that stood out was that, many years later, when he ended up establishing himself as an OBG, he was the go-to person in a shtetl, in a town, and in Lviv. And everybody started to go to him. He was the go-to person. And there was a family, and they were a family from the government. And they reached out to him and they said that our child, our child got lost during, we can't find our child, and a different family must have taken her, and she has a certain mark on her body. And if you ever happen to come across this girl, please let us know.
This sounds like something you read in a book. I can't believe I'm hearing it firsthand from you.
And he took down the information, where it is, and everything he needed to know. And years went on, and one day a girl comes in, and he sees exactly this spot, the way it was described at that part. And he immediately called that family. And because they had a lot of influence, they actually made it was really hard during that time to get to Eretz Israel. They said, as a thank you, here are the tickets. And that's how he got to Eretz Israel.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And as a thank you. And it's like this kind of stories of like such hashgacha pratis, that he was there at the right time. They knew who to reach out to, how they were thinking about how can we find her? And maybe he will be able to, one day maybe that will be possible. And that is what happened.
And do you know anyone else your age whose parent was a Holocaust survivor?
No.
It's unheard of.
No. Usually people are much older than me.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah. And it was like, I always looked up to my father because he was very young at heart. He taught me everything, and he taught me every sport that I know. And but I was also teased a lot. People, the kids, oh, is this your grandfather? And, a lot of teasing. And I was like, oh, that's my father. As a child, you receive those things a little differently than as an adult.
Of course.
But sometimes it wasn't so easy to process.
Sure. And I mean, I have so many questions, and it's always hard for me to progress forward while thinking like, well, me and Tania need to have coffee after this to have a whole debriefing. So that's where like my brain is trying to compute everything you're saying. But my question for you, Tania, is, were you raised Orthodox with parents? No. So what was it like being Jewish in Austria? Was there anti-Semitism?
Yeah, sure. And also I grew up in a traditional home. So with a very strong foundation of like believing in Hashem. And there was a lot, my parents were very spiritual, but just didn't know so much about Torah way of life and halacha. So there was always a deep connection to Hashem. And my mom always told me the only thing, just trust in Hashem, believe in Hashem. Nothing else is, so important. So basically, I grew up in a traditional home with those strong foundations, but I went to a non-Jewish school. And so I experienced a lot of antisemitism and a lot of comments. And I had a photographic memory. So a lot of times when I was studying things, I was able to just memorize things. And so they accused me of cheating.
This is Tania's humble way of saying, like, I'm pretty smart. And people were intimidated, and that's okay.
Well, she did go to the best school in Austria.
I'm so not surprised.
I was, and so it's like this kind of comments that were always like trying to see, in what ways they can fail me. And I remember my English teacher kind of like telling me, this year I'm giving you a chance and I'll just about let you pass in English, in the subject in English. Later on, fast forward, I graduate in law school in a foreign language, in English. So I just look back and I'm like, these things if I only knew in that moment what would happen, but it was challenging. It was very challenging because I didn't feel like I belong in school around non-Jews. And I also didn't really feel belong amongst the Jews because I didn't really fit in.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, as a child growing up, I really felt like maybe being Jewish is a curse, because I don't feel like I belong anywhere. Like, how is that helping me? They don't like me and they don't like me. So it was very, very challenging until I actually, at the age of 16, I moved to England. My sister and I are very close. She went to medical school to England, and we moved to Oxford, and I ended up in the Chabad house. And that was my first exposure of seeing, wow, life as a Jew is really nice, and discovering how people live and what they do. At the time, I was just exploring. I was just observing, didn't take anything upon myself at that point. But that was my first great association and seeing Torah way of life from a different point of view.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that is, Chabad is kind of like the only exposure I had. So it's the only thing I knew. There was a time I didn't even know that there was something else other than Chabad. That's what ended up happening. In Austria, however, my biggest outlet during going through difficult times was I found my passion in table tennis. So I really dived into, I have a story about my father just practicing in the park. Somebody was standing there seeing how we play, and he just came up to me and said, "You have a golden hand. I want you to come play in my club." And I was like, I don't know, I was just playing with my father. And so I ended up going to the club, starting to practice, entering competitions. And that was my outlet. That was like my escape and my happy place, Yeah. And I think everybody needs that for themselves, especially when they're going through challenges, to have their happy place. And that was like my happy place. It was my place where I could let things out and really excel. And there wasn't as much judgment or comments there. I was able to just do what I love doing.
Yeah. And I don't know if she'll tell me, so Amit, let us know how did she do when she was playing tennis? Was she okay? Was she really good? How far did she go?
Yeah, Tania is a phenomenal table tennis player.
Ping pong. Let's call it ping pong.
All right, ping pong player. And she won the European finals, I believe.
The European, the Maccabi Games.
Maccabi, right?
Jewish Olympics.
Yeah. And she, when she was very pregnant, she still wouldn't turn down an invitation to
don't
play.
recommend it.
Yeah.
Don't play when you're pregnant. But I did.
Oh, it's so fascinating. It's so beautiful to hear your story, and it always makes me encourage everyone listening to realize that there's so much to everyone, even if their story may not obviously look as sparkly and different, but there's so much to everyone, and it's so exciting to be able to hear it and to learn from it. I think it's a treat that you're both willing to share it. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I know we didn't get everything, but thanks for the beautiful peek into your life. I'm so excited to keep going. Now let's turn to Amit. Can you please paint a picture for us of where you grew up and what your background is like?
Sure. So I grew up in New York City in Manhattan. It was kind of like, I guess, a magical time. I had all these friends, and we were able to roam, I guess, in ways that people in the suburbs don't always get to, which was cool. And I just throughout, there are so many people who came from so many different countries to be in New York. And so that's the environment that I grew up in, and, had some great friendships out of it. And yeah.
And Amit's background is, so different and unique in a sense where just being a child of Holocaust survivors is one chapter of itself. Did you grow up Orthodox?
So I call it more like a traditional or conservative. My grandfather was actually a German conservative rabbi who left Germany about 1939 and just started setting up Jewish communities around the different Latin American countries. Mm-hmm. And so that was sort of like the background for my Yiddishkeit.
Fascinating. Yeah. And how did you ultimately go from there to becoming Orthodox?
I went to college, and for some reason, I still don't really know why. I really just felt like I wanted to not be in such a Jewish environment. And I was like, I grew up with lots of Jews and non-Jews and, some shtuyot, but, and I didn't realize, so I applied to go to Penn, Pennsylvania, And I didn't realize that it was like already the most Jewish school out there in the States. And so, and when I was there, I had all these friends who started doing this Jewish learning program called Meor. And it was really good. And they were all telling me to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. This is great. And then they even like pay you money to learn. Just like a real kollel.
He
right?
had such a great experience. He went on safari, all of those trips. People go on birthright. I did none of those things. I went from, just learning to like, okay, I'm going to Israel, to seminary. It was awesome.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I'm going to go on a completely, random cliff note here. I've had a lot of experience working with young college professionals who are secular, with teens at risk, people that don't know anything, orphans from Odessa, Ukraine. And one of the themes that was highlighted to me when I was doing this work was that if someone is completely distant from Judaism, there's so many opportunities that add glitter and sparkle to our culture. And one of them being through Meor or Chabad, there's constant warmth, or other organizations, or there's incentives that say, come give us a chance because we'll interest you with this exciting trip. And it made me feel a little sad that if someone is raised traditionally or in a, so to speak, more familiar, educated, Orthodox environment, that maybe because something is so routine, sometimes maybe educators or families forget to add that sparkle,
that
to
flavor,
add that flavor. And with the teens at risk, I remember someone telling me that they felt like it was so unfortunate that they had to be at risk to then be reintroduced to Judaism from a perspective that was warm and exciting, instead of one where there was an expectation and pressure. And it's just a little cliff note that I want to put out there for anyone that needs to hear it, for anyone that's in a position of influence. The glitter shouldn't stop. I have a very good friend, Yocheved Magid. Every holiday, she decorates her entire home as if like it's the first time they're celebrating it. We need to continue to bring that beauty. And I think we need to work harder when we're used to it.
Yes.
So just a little cliff note. So thank you for introducing that.
Sure.
It's true.
And how old were you when you met Tania?
I was 30. Yeah.
And how old were you?
I was 29.
And how did the two of you meet?
So my path was very, very different. I was Chabad. So I learned in Chabad seminary. I also afterwards I went to Crown Heights. I lived in Crown Heights. I remember when I went to Crown Heights, I remember just ending up in 770 and I was like, I've arrived. I was like, I'm here. I was like taking advantage every Shabbos. I was just like there all the time. My friends are like, let's explore different shuls. I'm like, why would you want to go anywhere when you are here with, you have 770. So I was there all the time. I was like, I used to watch Living Torah where I saw the Rebbe and his Verbringens and his Maimorim and giving over sichos. And I was there and just like,
it was your kotel.
This was my yeah, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I was there all the time. And that was also my dating path. I wasn't really dating outside of Chabad. So I, my parents weren't so happy about that. I'm, limiting myself and, already I'm going to come home with a guy that has such a long beard and no, I'm going to marry a rabbi.
Did you leave your beard at home?
BYOB.
BYOB.
And so so eventually, I had this, I remember sitting one day in 770, just saying Tehillim and, davening, thinking. And there was a lady not far from me and she was always there. There's certain people at 770 that are there. They're always there. And she was always there. And I remember we were like always smiling at each other because, you start seeing the regulars. And she looked a woman of wisdom, just like filled with wisdom, like shining, radiating. And one day she looks at me and she said to me, he's not here. And I was like, I know.
Oh.
And it was like that connection. We started to talk afterwards, and we had a friendship. But that it became very clear. There was almost like a message there that I'm not going to find him here. So then my father was already deteriorating his condition. So I went back to Vienna. And at that point, I had already traveled for dating. You know, I traveled, I explored different places. You know, from when you date from Europe, you know, it's not like in America. You know that you have limited options. You will have to do other things. So you know that you have to travel. And so I've been to many places for dating. And so in the end, I said, you know, I'm going home. I'm going to be with my father. I'm going to, you know, I was many years away. So I was happy to go home. And I said, I'm going to get married from here. I don't know what came up. I don't know why I made that decision. I said, you know, I did my Hishtadlus. I know I have to continue my Hishtadlus, but I have a feeling that I will do what most girls do. You know, they marry from home, you know, and that's what I'm going to do. And then I went home, and it was a hard year, you know, going back to where I started almost, you know, and also feeling, you know, after being in Eretz Israel and Crown Heights, it was like such spirituality. I felt like I was right back where I remember being in the subway and Mameshnik, I was listening to Avram Fried and, you know, just, you know, minding my own business, just listening. There was Mamesh next to me, a neo-Nazi. And I was like, oh my gosh, I ran. I remember I took the next stop and I knew there was a shul there. I ran to the shul and I was just like, men were davening mincha and they were like, this girl is showing up. And I was like, can I just go inside? You know? And he was like, give me one moment. All the men were leaving. It was a Hasidic shul. And he said, you can go inside now. And I just went and I felt so protected. And I felt I was home and I was just davening Tehillim. I was like, what? Hashem, show me. You know, I did my part. I traveled the world. Now I'm here. My father is not well. What do you want from me? And so I was just letting it all out and davening. And soon after, it was during Pesach, Chol Hamoed Pesach, that I was, you know, I was not feeling well. And during Chol Hamoed Pesach, the Rebbe appeared in my dream. And I had a yechidus with the Rebbe in my dream. And afterwards, I called my rabbi and I said to my rabbi, I don't know what that means. The Rebbe came into my dream and he said, Tanya, the Rebbe chooses who to come to. It's not out of nothing. He chooses who to come to. Not everybody dreams about the Rebbe. Only a chassid dreams about the Rebbe. And he chose to come to you. And I knew from that moment on, everything will be fine. That was Chol Hamoed Pesach. Shavuos is when I met Amit. And I met a family in Vienna that told me, I went for Shavuos to Eretz Israel just for Shavuos, to have a bit of a break.
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to pretend that this is casual, that the Rebbe came to you in a dream, because I know there's more you need to say, but it's far from casual. But I'm not surprised. The Rebbe would come to you in a dream, Tanya. You know, it makes sense, but I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I don't want to go off tangent, so you tell me when to pause, because I'm just going to.
You know what? I'll actually pause you here on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
We'll be right back to the episode, but first, a really important pause. As mentioned last week, we're starting something new here at Stories of Hope. Every week, I'll be giving tzedakah in the merit of all those that are single and all those who feel like they're missing something and hoping that this podcast can help them through it. And I'm doing it through my favorite tzedakah app by Koel Chabad, the Tzedakah Pushka app. Super cool, super easy. I'll be doing it right now, making my daily dedication. And now we're done. And I have a 1 weekday streak, which means I've been giving every single day this week. And the coolest part is when you're done, Koel Chabad takes the funds and donates it to orphans who are struggling to pay for their wedding. It's so easy. So thank you for joining our special SOH episode. And if you want to give tzedakah too, to contribute to this important cause that I'm working on, that I'd love to invite you on, then download the Koel Chabad Tzedakah Pushka app so that you can have it on the comfort of your phone. And you can give tzedakah not just by yourself, but together with me every week on this episode. You have to check out Pizza Biza, making fresh hot pizzas on the spot by their professional chefs, indoor or outdoor in their pizza ovens, meat or dairy, plus full catering around the tri-state area and Florida. Specializing in events with several hundred people with no lines. You heard right. Full menu. You have to check them out on Instagram at Pizza Biza and visit them at pizzabiza.com. Pizza's my favorite food, so please invite me, Pizza Biza, on Instagram and check them out at pizzabiza.com. These are the people you want to call. Pizza Biza, I'll see you at my next event. While all of this is happening to Tania, Amit, what was happening on your end when it came to navigating dating and this next stage in your life?
Tania says that it was a good quote.
I mean,
It said,
I was served on a platter. You finished yeshiva, and right after yeshiva, I was there.
Okay. In the meanwhile, my interest in Yiddishkeit had grown a lot, and just over time, I was really interested in learning more and learning in Israel. And one day, a friend of mine wanted to submit me for a job in my field that was like one of the best places you could get a job at. And the first thought that came to mind was, if I want to learn, I could spend the rest of my life learning. And at the pace that you learn at, like when you're not in yeshiva, it's like I could spend the rest of my life learning, but like I still won't know anything. When this friend told me about the opening, and then the first thought that came to mind was, if I don't do this now, probably never will. And I just feel a lot more excited about learning than about my career. So I was like, okay, so I guess I better follow my instincts here and go to Israel. And so I went. I spent 2 years learning at a wonderful yeshiva called Machon Yaakov in Jerusalem. And when I was coming up on it was a 2-year program, and I was getting towards the end of it, and that's when Tania and I met. I
love that. Oftentimes that happens. The woman's like, so this is my whole saga of challenge and tribulation. And the guy's like, well, I was having a really great time doing the things I should not have been doing. And then when I was ready, God was like, here she is. And, we do learn that Mashiach's going to come from the woman. So I guess we need to be tested a lot more. But I could not say that is not far from classic. But I am curious to hear, what was the job that you turned down to go learn in yeshiva instead? Because that's really admirable.
It was to be a junior analyst. This was at a hedge fund that was doing well at the time.
Wow. That's really inspiring. And I know that your story had a plot twist along the way. And we'll start with you, Amit. Can you please share with us what that looked like?
My high school was located really close to the World Trade Center. And after 9/11, a few years later, when I graduated from college, I was diagnosed with cancer. And it was a type of cancer that a lot of recovery workers who were downtown by the barges had been getting. And I was planning on doing a trip around the world before that, and all kinds of nice things before starting my work. And it changed everything.
Must have been so scary.
Yeah, absolutely.
And since that diagnosis, what has life been like for you?
I mean, then you should say you recovered.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's. Sorry, I don't want to make this too hard.
I didn't even know you had cancer. I was even referencing the Parkinson.
Right.
Yes.
But I didn't even know that. So thank you for sharing.
Sure.
So that was it was directly connected to 9/11.
Wow.
The cancer. Yeah. And
that's so upsetting to hear that many people who are recovery workers, literally saving lives or just living their life, developed cancer due to what do people say? The debris, the toxins that were in the air.
All of that, yeah.
And she was right there. The ground was shaking, and it was, Remember him telling me the story.
Even just to be there.
Yeah.
That's like a Dayenu challenge.
Yeah.
And then to have cancer because of that,
Right.
that's so scary. And how long was that period like, that the treatment and the recovery?
So I remember that I started telling people, about what happened, and they said, "Oh, it's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm. They say that that's the good cancer, so it's okay." That doesn't really. I don't know if that really adds anything. I'm thinking, what did we have? We had
you went under treatment, and
Right.
then after a few years, you recovered.
yeah, that's
When
true.
when
Yeah.
when we met, he told me, and he also told me that everything was okay.
Yeah.
And he fully recovered.
Yeah.
The doctor gave all the go ahead
Right.
of like it's all good now. So
Yeah.
that's what I think people meant by it's the good cancer.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah,
I didn't even know that you had cancer. And it blows my mind that even after battling through that, you were hit with this new diagnosis that I know you're primarily in today to talk about.
Yeah.
Can you tell us when that started in your marriage and what it was?
Sure. So it was about 7 years after we first got married. Tania was 4 months pregnant, and life was amazing. We would sometimes we get together and just talk, have a good time. Sometimes we get this feeling of oh no, the tears are coming. We're never going to finish filming this. We have to try. Okay, so
Tears are fine. Tears are fine.
And then it happened. We just had this sort of feeling of that, we'd ask each other if it was too good to be true. And then around the time that COVID hit, I started noticing that I was kind of off balance, and I would have to sort of always be paying attention to maintain balance. And I went to every doctor that I was told to go and try out, and no one knew what it was.
everything seemed fine. It was like it started off with an awkward walk. It was like, what is this type of walk? It seemed a little bit off. And since my sister's a doctor, I recorded it and I sent it to her, and she said, I think you should go to a neurologist. And we went to every neurologist, and everything seemed fine until one said, you should go to a movement disorder specialist. And that is when he came home with the diagnosis. And I remember the moment so vividly. I was rushing out to pick up our children. I was 4 months pregnant with our fourth child. We have 4 girls, Kena and Ara. And he came in and he just told me what his doctor said, and we just hugged, and it was a very, very, very special moment. And I didn't really know what it meant. I didn't really know what it meant. The only thing I knew about Parkinson's was tremor.
I was going to ask you, sorry to pause you, if you could share what the diagnosis was, because I know, but we didn't really introduce it, so our listeners don't know.
Okay. So I was diagnosed to have Parkinson's disease.
At what age?
At about 38.
37.
Isn't that very unusual?
Yeah, I think that's what made it hard to diagnose at first.
I think isn't the average age 60
and
and
up?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm like the new guy.
It's early onset and it's very unusual.
Yeah.
And when you were in the office and they delivered this news to you, what went on in your mind during that moment?
A bit of shock. Kind of like the cancer in some ways. But I think with the cancer, at least early on, I was told, don't worry about it. This is curable. And with Parkinson's, it seems it just doesn't feel as happy, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. There's a lot more that's unknown. You don't have that safety of predictability.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And there is no cure for it right now. So it's about managing it.
And how long have you had it for so far? 4
years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I have so many questions. My first question is, how do the two of you, how do you with Tania work together to stay hopeful and I guess I would say, I don't know if optimistic is the right word because I want it to be real. Sometimes being optimistic it isn't appropriate if someone's feeling emotional. How do the two of you stay hopeful and like a power team while navigating through this struggle?
So I remember we made a decision when all of this was happening at the very beginning. We said that we are a lot of people. We are big hosters. We host a lot, and we always had an open home policy. And it's something that both of us always enjoyed. Even when we were dating, we said, "Do you like hosting?" So
that was maybe the first date or second date.
Yeah, we made sure both of us like hosting. So when this happened, a lot of people were like saying, "Maybe you shouldn't host so much. Maybe you shouldn't do this so much and that so much." And I said, I actually think that we should continue doing exactly what we always did. And it brings us simcha. And if we stop doing the things that we enjoy, then Parkinson's has won, you know? And I was like, we need to continue doing and living the life as much as we can. Of course, if it becomes too difficult, don't do it. But, you know, we made a conscious choice not to let it win our life and dictate how we should live. And so as much as we can, I remember we even, you know, he has to exercise a lot. It's the only real thing that slows down progression. So for the disease to progress. So dancing is really, really helpful. So I remember we just, with all the kids, we went together and we picked up and we were just like dancing in circles and jumping. We said, we are going to do it and we're going to do it with simcha. So, you know, not for like toxic positivity or anything, but it was a conscious choice that we made to say, you know, let's continue to do the things that bring us joy in life. And yes, even people are surprised at times to, you still do that? You still do that? I'm like, yes, I might have to navigate this and I might have to plan 10 steps ahead and be ready for any sort of situation. But we are going to continue to do the things that bring us joy in life, even in the midst of all of this.
Last year in Sukkot, we had a bunch of friends over and I couldn't get up. And they had to lift me up.
Four guys.
Yeah, 4 guys and carry me basically. Yeah. And we started, I remember one evening, it was Shabbos afternoon and Mincha, 3 guys were mamish like carrying him home. It was so heartbreaking to see. And this is when the guys were saying, maybe, do you want us to come to you? So ever since we started a minyan in our house. So sometimes those kind of things also
brought beauty. 770 to your address.
That's right.
That's how you do it, Tania.
Exactly. But I think it's like, it's really important to acknowledge all the emotions that we have, you know. I'm even with my children, I'm not the one who's like, oh, we're just going to be like positive, acknowledge where you're at, and then acknowledge that things can be hard and there are many tough days, but making a conscious choice for hope and to keep moving forward.
We'll be right back to our episode. But if you love to travel or you've always wanted to travel, then crank up the volume. I am seriously about to change your life. I just found out about this company called lalechet.org, whose mantra is the following: give us your wish list and we'll give you the world. This is a white glove service agency that takes care of everything when it comes to traveling from top to bottom. They're available 24/6. They'll take care of your airfare. They'll take care of your insurance. They'll take care of your itinerary. And get this, it won't just be done. It'll be perfect. And they offer 2 options. You can organize your own trip, whether you want an all-women's trip that you've always dreamed of, but just didn't know how to do, a family trip, a work trip. They can even charter a plane if you want something a little extra fancy and that just works for you. Or you can join one of their already curated trips. They have amazing trips that explore Jewish history with fancy meals. I mean, I don't know where this has been, but I know that this is a company I'll be using. So if you finally want the keys to the dreams that you've always had, but now you can finally make them reality, then check out lalechet.com to create that life that you no longer need to dream of, but can finally do. lalechet.com, they'll take care of all of it for you. That concept that you said has been echoing since it came out of your mouth. We made a conscious choice to choose that this wouldn't change the happiness and joy that we want our life to have. And I want to ask you, when you're in a position where you're having an extra challenging day, and maybe every day is extra challenging, how often do you need to make that conscious choice?
I guess once per episode or once per day. As long as I remember to do that and to count my blessings and just notice that there's still a lot of good stuff going on too. A couple of the most useful tools I have, and I don't always know how it's gonna work out. Just having that bitachon and knowing that it will.
Yeah, because I feel like there are so many people who might be listening who have their own challenge that feels like it's maybe destroying the quality of their life. And I want to know, as an expert in challenge, which you are, if you can teach them how to make that conscious choice. Because if it was a button, we'd all flip it. We'd all press it. But to the journey to get there, where you're making the conscious choice, that sounds like a triathlon. What's the process look like to stay motivated and disciplined to work on making that choice?
For one, it's just, how do I make that conscious choice of positivity
And to keep going.
and to keep on going? And Parkinson's is one of those things that there are not a lot of great options. Psychologically, emotionally, like every domain you could think of. And so that leaves us with choosing the reality that exists. And then once you've done that, you kind of need, for it to be pleasant or a bit more pleasant, then you need to have a positive attitude about these not so nice things that are happening. So what I've found useful is my cycles might be like a day or half a day. And just each day, especially if I'm getting negative, to just notice it and say to yourself, just like, leave me alone, or hey, I guess maybe different people have their own haze, but that's how I think about it.
Yeah, it's what you're saying is truly life-changing, which is accepting that this is my reality. Acceptance is extraordinarily healing. It can feel really scary, and we could have resentment, throw a tantrum, and not feel like we're ready to accept. Right. But accepting that this is the reality gives you permission to move forward, and also gives you permission to grieve, which is where you are. And grieving is actually very healing. And then what I'm also hearing you say is you're constantly working on on growing through it instead of just getting through it. So whether that's being positive, whether that's, you mentioned earlier, counting your blessings, you're trying to shift from being stuck to soaring through. And I think that sometimes it's natural to be like, well, I'm just waiting to feel better. And if we wait to feel, we'll always be stuck. But when we're growing, it's a constant job. You have many full-time jobs. One is your mental health and well-being. One is your physical health. One is your role as a spouse and as a family member. It's you're constantly running, and it works. What's amazing is that you're running towards something that works. It's inspiring to hear.
Yeah.
Throughout this experience, I always ask this question: How did you contend with God and your challenges? How did it affect your relationship? What was your reaction when you heard this diagnosis from a spiritual perspective? If you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. So spiritually, I spoke with a few Rabbanim the kinds of people I've had these kinds of conversations with before and who I feel close to. And I think the most consistent feedback I got was basically like everything happens for a reason. And this means you're more part of Hashem's plan than before. And yeah, I think that was sort of the bulk of it. And for me, it was one of those kind of weird combinations of, yes, that's very nice, but like I don't want like Lahavdil Yonah. Like that's very nice, but what if I don't want that job, you know? And so far it hasn't been rescinded, I guess. And I guess for me, like it didn't create any doubts for me. I'd say just spiritually, the toughest for me is the whole, I don't want this job or, you know, but other than that, like when people say that, like, oh, like when you, like Hashem makes the people he loves suffer. You know, things like that.
Yeah, I don't want to be one of them.
That's basically,
And I'm just going to reflect on what you just said. When someone's experiencing challenge, it's an instinct for someone, in an effort to make them feel better, they might make them feel worse by saying comments like, well, Hashem, you know, the ones that suffer the most are the ones that God loves the most. And then your instinct is like, well, don't love me so much. or everything happens for a reason. And you might, as you mentioned, you said, well, I don't want there to be a reason. Thank you for being so honest. Thank you for being so honest. It is so relatable to have this human experience of, I don't know God's plan, and therefore it doesn't make sense. And therefore it may not be giving me so much peace. And in my human experience with my limited mind, I don't understand. And I also am not comfortable with it. And I think that to me is more inspiring and admirable than someone who says, I accept God's challenge with faith, because that feels good to be in a place where you could accept God's will and challenge with faith. That feels good. You're benefiting from your own ability to have that sort of relationship to your challenge. Be in a challenge where you say, oh God, this is supposed to make me a diamond. I'm okay being a pebble. That's my line. Like, I'm okay being a pebble. Yeah. That's a hard place to be in. Yeah. And I give, I mean, hats off, awards off, banners up to anyone that's in that place. I think being in that place and navigating through that challenge of, I don't understand it, it hurts, and I want to cash in, God. I want to cash in, and being honest about that, and still waking up every day and fighting with everything that you don't feel you have.
I believe this is actually where true healing starts. Because if you are always in this, I just accept this and this is what it is, then are you really tapping? You have to be honest with yourself. Are you really tapping into what's true for you right now? You know?
Yeah.
And that's when people ask me, Tania, how do you stay strong through all of this? You know, I think there is this assumption or this belief that strength means being tough.
Her. Sorry, I interrupted you. Say it again. Start from the beginning.
You're tough. You're pushing through. You know, I don't need any help. That is strength. But in my eyes, that is not strength. For me, strength is to acknowledge that you have tough days, and that you acknowledge that, and that you know that once you acknowledge that you have tough days, that you make a choice. You choose hope. You choose to keep moving forward every single day. The small decisions that you make, you know, even when they're difficult, that you keep moving forward. And strength comes in waves. I find every day strength looks different. And when I, sometimes strength is like powering through a day, and sometimes strength is breathing through the pain and trying again tomorrow. And I find that also, as long as I acknowledge all of my emotions, then I'm able to say, okay, now I've acknowledged everything that's true for me right now. Now I can piece myself together and continue. And I ask for help when I need help. And I find that the community and the people and the friends, and that's the beauty through this challenge, is that you see how amazing people are and how much people want to help. And so I feel I feel sad when I see how much people live in shame and how much people suffer in silence and isolation. And that's why we speak about it. That's why we speak about it, so that we can find connection, so that we can find belonging, so that people find belonging, so that we can connect to each other. And I find that, that is really what strength is. We don't have to, and we're not supposed to do everything on our own. And people want to help. And that is what I've also discovered, that, and such a beautiful thing also about Amit is that he didn't have the shame. He had, he said, okay, we need help. Let's ask for help. And that also makes everything so much easier for everyone, because people want to be there for us as well. So everybody benefits. And I think it makes life so much richer in through all this challenge.
And
so
I want to give the two of you a shout out. Nobody knows this. When Tania reached out to me, she said, I just want you to know, I don't know if we'll be able to make it. And I don't know, maybe it was how long did you say it took you to get here? An hour and a half?
Yeah, an hour and a half. And he wasn't feeling so well.
And she said, and even if Amit has an episode, then you might need to lay down and it might not even work at all.
Yeah.
And people struggle to get out of bed simply to go to work when they're feeling fine. And yet you took this exhausting trip that I hope is very nourishing. And you took a chance on your well-being because you believe in what you have to share. That's something that's really important to me that our audience members know. That's not something that I don't see. And I just want to say thank you for that. And I want to highlight something else you just shared, which is you take a deep breath and you try again. It makes sense if every day isn't a good day. But we know that tomorrow is always another chance, or the next hour is always another chance. And oftentimes we need to just take things moment by moment and then congratulate and reflect that, this was a good moment.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, and so thank you so much for sharing. That was so beautiful. Amit, as someone that has had a diagnosis twice, you're an old-time champion at this point. What would you say is a comforting form of support for someone to share when they hear that someone's been diagnosed with an illness, whether it's independent of the range? Any illness for any individual is extremely scary. Everyone always wants to help and they don't know what to say. We're learning what they shouldn't say. What would you say is something that you personally find comforting and might be helpful for those to hear if they know someone in that position?
That is such a good question. It feels like it sets off little bells in my mind when I think back to conversations like that.
Yeah, and you could share those bells. Like what kind of bells?
I feel like nothing is more comforting than hearing you'll recover from that. That would be the ideal, I guess.
Yeah.
But absent of that, but you know what? Even though maybe that's a circumstance you can't change, but I still think it's really powerful to hear that some aspect of it that you can control. Yeah.
And I'll ask it to Tania. Maybe people reached out to you too when they heard, like, when as someone whose husband was diagnosed, what would be something that's comforting for you to hear from strangers, family, friends?
Honestly, just to know that they're there. That is all, when people reach out and say, I'm here, and also give some suggestions, because sometimes you don't even know what it is that you need.
Yeah. And
they give some suggestions. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually need that. I didn't even think about that. So coming up with some suggestions of like, do you want to come out for a coffee? Do you want me to take your kids? Do you want me to, bring some food or whatever that is? It's like, I think a lot of times you have just so much as a caregiver, you have so much to do and to juggle. You don't really think so straight about the things that you actually need or what could be helpful and where to begin. Also, I think that both me and him often, we don't want to be a burden to anyone. And so when people offer specific things, it's very, very helpful. Yeah.
That's great. Like, can you give an example that may not come to someone's mind of something specific?
Yeah, there were quite a few where I was like, oh, this is so great. When they were like thinking when they were thinking like a step ahead. I don't know if it was like a Yom Tov or something was coming up and they were like, it's going to be hot that day, or it's going to be a long Shabbos, or it's going to be this and that. Should we come over, or should we arrange something for your kids, or should we do something? It's like very specific because they're like already every day is like, you don't know what the day is going to bring. So planning ahead is also really hard at times. So when somebody plans for you and says, this is what's going to happen, can we do that for you? That is incredible.
It's also an extra step up in sensitivity. Instead of open-minded, let me know if there's anything I can do. It's so vulnerable. It's so hard.
Yes.
I don't want to let you know.
Exactly.
Instead, hey, can I make you dinner Tuesday night?
Exactly.
I know you're going to the city for an appointment.
Exactly.
Would that be helpful?
Exactly. So that when you come home, you don't have to worry about dinner because I know you're going to the doctor that day. Something like that. It's like one step ahead and so proactive. And really, you're helping the other person think ahead when it is so hard for that person to think ahead. Yeah.
And is it offensive when people bring up their own history or experience with a disease that you're both struggling with in an effort to connect to you? Like if they say, well, I know someone who had Parkinson's and this is what they did, or this is what happened to them. Because I know that's something people try to find similar ground.
Right.
Like it's almost like at a Shiva house when someone's parent passes away and someone's like, well, I lost my uncle, and you're like, I can't relate to you. You lost your, but they're just trying to connect, and they don't know it's not really like the time and place.
Right.
Anything like that ever happen?
Yes.
All the time. What's it like for you?
Yeah, so for that reason, I try not to say things that imply that I know what I'm talking about. What I mean by that is, if someone comes to me and says like, "Hey, I'm so sorry that your father died. Like I lost my cat last week," or something like that. It's right. I think it can be hard to connect with someone over that because you don't know what they've been through, you don't know what they're going through, you don't know how much they're impacted.
Yeah.
And so I just try to avoid to the extent that I can. What I do try to do is to get to talk to the person, get a sense of what sort of, is affecting him the most, and try to speak into that. It's kind of like a...
So I'll actually switch the question I asked you before. Is there something people do that's actually not comforting that they think is, so that people know how to be more sensitive?
Yeah. So I'd say what isn't comforting is speaking with someone and trying to, and telling them that what they've been through, and
it's very dismissive. Oh, I know what you've been through because fill in the blank. You have no idea.
Yeah, every experience is so unique, and especially when somebody comes and says, my grandma had Parkinson's, and I'm like, I feel for them because I'm sure that was their own journey of like, but I think it's like.
Your grandma wasn't 37.
Exactly.
She
wasn't 37 in the peak of her career with very young children and had the whole life ahead. So it's like it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
And in that moment, even though I it isn't helping, because it just isn't. It's a whole different experience for such, for someone so young to experience this. But I try to, I just extract the good, So I just think, okay, they want to connect, or they want to, what do they want in essence from sharing that with me?
That's beautiful. It's very unnatural. You're like up here. I'm already feeling defensive and angry for you. And Tania's like,
don't tell her that.
I think like a big theme is you don't need to be able to relate to provide support and comfort.
Exactly. And in the end of the day, I find that a lot of times people share that story to relate. But instead of telling, that specific scenario, just connecting to that emotion, let's say they think I'm grieving, or they think I'm sad, or they want to comfort me. Why not share, how to connect with that emotion? I remember when I was grieving about something, then we can connect over grieving, or we can connect over being, over sadness, over something. But when it becomes too specific, we start focusing on that specificity, of that scenario. That is disconnecting.
Yeah.
Instead of speaking about scenarios, speak about emotions you can relate to. And I remember when I was grieving, oh yeah, we can connect over grieving. But your grandmother and my husband is not quite as the same,
Yeah. And as we're coming to a close, I'm wondering if there's someone listening who recently received a diagnosis, if they're in a relationship and their spouse received a diagnosis. Are there support groups, organizations that you can share that maybe they would find helpful?
Absolutely. Yeah. LifeSpark. LifeSpark is a Jewish Parkinson's organization in Lakewood. There is the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And those are two great
Parkinson's Foundation.
The Parkinson's Foundation. So, yeah.
Yeah, there are a couple other good ones.
Yeah.
Too.
And would it be okay if we include your email addresses in the show notes so people can reach out with any questions?
Absolutely.
This has been unlike anything I've ever done before. And I have a lot of akar satov to the two of you for coming in.
Thank you.
And we're now old friends. So, I'm very grateful for that too. And as we're finishing up, I wanted to know, is there any last thought that you wanted to share, Amit, for your episode that you want people to know? Or that's been a learning experience for you?
Last thought is don't go it alone. And I think it's like Parkinson's includes a lot of potentially embarrassing symptoms. And that goes into the second piece of aids I'd like to pass along. Don't spend too much time worrying about what other people think about you, because most of the time they're like thinking about the guy behind you, and they don't even know, like they don't know that you exist. And
I always say, nobody thinks about you as much as you think about you. So don't think everybody's always thinking about what, about you and, what it looks like, what it feels like. So, and I think that is something that we both were thinking about in this journey together, that a lot of people just become very self-conscious, of course, for obvious reasons. Like you said, it can feel embarrassing at times. I carry him in public. It's not something that you see on a day-to-day. But I think once you go through something like this, you stop caring so much about what other people think.
And I think it's very helpful for that. Yeah.
You realize what's important.
Yeah.
And I think it also changes if you change how you think about yourself. So if you feel, I would imagine, you could correct me, if maybe in the beginning you felt embarrassed, it made you think that other people were looking down on you. And then when you change how you feel, then how other people feel isn't so relevant. And I do need to say that as a result of this episode, anyone that looks at the two of you is just going to be in awe and extremely inspired and see greatness that maybe you didn't know you had. So that's no longer something that should ever be on your mind
Amen.
This has been really special. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow. If you were emotional, if you cried, if you laughed, then you know that this episode was really from the heart to the heart. And that's all we want to do here at Stories of Hope. And I want to say thank you to everyone who commented last week on Natalie and Jake's episode. There were 55 of you who took 60 seconds out of your day to let Natalie and Jake know how much the episode meant to you. They came back to me and said we were so nervous, but so grateful that we did it. And the comments were so meaningful. So today, I ask if you can kindly take a few seconds to simply leave a comment, letting Amit and Tania know what this episode meant to you. If it touched you, any words of encouragement or gratitude that you want to share with them. It is such an easy way to provide impact to someone who took time out of their day to provide impact for you. So once again, thank you for being a part of the SOH family. And now with summer here, almost here, today feels like summer, I know you'll be meeting new people in camps, in the bungalows, at a pool party, or at dinner. And if you meet someone that's a good fit for our podcast, drumroll, you know what to do. Please, please send them my way at soh@meaningfulminute.org. And to those who have responded and commented, I see your feedback, and I'm pretty sure at this point you've heard from me because we're all caught up. It means the world. This is hard work, and it takes a team to do it. So thank you for being on mine. See you next week at Stories of Hope.